the Ghost of Blackwood Bay. The fog in Blackwood Bay didn't just roll in, it haunted the streets like a living memory. Maya Lynn stood at the edge of the jagged cliffs, her breath hitching as the salt spray stung her cheeks. 10 years ago, her best friend Clara Vance had walked into this mist and never come back. Now Maya was home to find the truth for her true crime podcast. The town felt like it was holding its breath, the silence of the Atlantic weighing heavy on her shoulders as she clicked her digital recorder to on. Her first stop was the local station, but the welcome was colder than the water. Chief Thomas Vance, Clara's uncle, loomed over his desk, his face a map of grief and bitterness. He didn't look up from the paperwork that had occupied him for a decade. "You're digging up a grave that doesn't exist, Maya," Thomas growled, his voice like grinding stones. He pointed a thick, steady finger at the door, his eyes finally meeting hers with a look of exhausted warning. Driven by the cold reception, Maya retreated to the town's damp library. The air here smelled of salt-damaged paper and cedar. She spent hours scrolling through microfiche of old news reports, the flickering light of the machine casting long shadows against the stacks. Every headline from 10 years ago was a jagged reminder of the search parties that found nothing. The archives felt like a tomb, housing the secrets of a town that preferred to forget its missing daughter. Seeking a different kind of history, Maya headed to the Rusty Anchor, a tavern that smelled of stale ale and old rope. In a corner booth, she found Julian Vance. Clara's brother looked like a ghost of the boy she once knew, his hands trembling as he gripped a glass. "She's still out there, Maya," Julian whispered, his voice barely audible over the crackle of the fireplace. He looked at Maya with a desperate, hollow hope that made her heart ache. The tavern door creaked open, admitting a gust of cold air and Dr. Evelyn Reed. The coroner moved with a grace that felt out of place in the grimy bar, her expensive wool coat sweeping the floor. Evelyn stopped at the booth, resting a gloved hand on Julian's shoulder for a brief, silent second. Her expression was one of practiced clinical sympathy, a mask that didn't quite reach her sharp, observing eyes. Julian didn't look up, but he seemed to shrink under her touch. Later that evening, Maya walked the old shoreline trail. The tide was pulling back, revealing the jagged, barnacle-covered ribs of the earth. She looked out at the Devil's Throat, the treacherous cove where the current was strongest. The town legend said the ocean here never gave back what it took. It wasn't just a cold wind blowing off the surf. It was a sense of being watched by the very waves that had swallowed her friend 10 years ago. Determined to find professional answers, Maya cornered Dr. Reed in her sterile office the next morning. The room was a sharp contrast to the rest of the town, white, cold, and smelling of antiseptic. 10 years is a long time for a body to stay missing, Maya pressed, her recorder running. Evelyn leaned back in her sleek chair, the light reflecting off her glasses. "In Blackwood Bay, the water is deep and the currents are hungry," the doctor replied, her voice entirely devoid of emotion. Midnight arrived with a low, mournful howl of the wind. Maya walked out onto the rocky beach near the Devil's Throat, her flashlight cutting a lonely path through the dark. She wore her headphones, listening to the rhythmic, low-frequency hum of the ocean for her podcast. The world was a symphony of crashes until a rhythmic, heavy splashing cut through the static. Slap, slap, slap. It wasn't the waves hitting the rocks. It was something rhythmic, something intentional. Maya clicked her flashlight toward a cluster of boulders, the beam snagging on something pale wedged between the rocks. She scrambled over the wet stones, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. The light revealed a cold, still form. It was a woman, her skin as white as the sea foam, her long hair tangled in the dark kelp like a shroud. After a decade of silence, the ocean had finally decided to give back what it had taken. Maya knelt in the wet sand, her fingers trembling as she reached toward the woman's neck. There, catching the harsh light of the flash, was a tarnished silver locket. Maya gasped, the sound lost to the crashing surf. She knew that locket. She had seen it 1,000 times in her childhood. It was the custom engraved piece Clara Vance had been wearing the night she vanished, and despite 10 years in the corrosive salt water, it looked brand new.